Hi, my name is Jennifer Howard, and today we're going to be talking about how to tell if you or someone else is an Enneagram Type 2 or an Enneagram Type 3. Recently, in the series that we're doing on how to tell different types apart, I just covered all of the different Enneagram numbers as compared to Type 1. I did not do Enneagram 1 versus Enneagram Type 9 as a comparison because those two are so different that I don't think that it needs much explanation. They're pretty easy to tell apart. If, however, you feel like that is a question that you need answered, or if it's something that you would like me to go into in more detail, please comment and let me know, and I will make sure to make a video addressing that for you, okay? Today I'm going to go again off of my notes that I have here on my laptop computer, and we're just going to discuss what are the differences between Type 2 and Type 3 that we can look for that will help us know whether or not we or someone else that we know is a 2 or a 3 on the Enneagram. So, I'm going to take, well, I'll say this. Enneagram Type 2 and Type 3, I feel like the primary reason that it's easy to get these two confused for each other, especially if they have each other as a wing, in other words, 2 with 3 versus 3 with 2, those can get really confusing, and one of the reasons that I believe that is because they are both emotional numbers, and it's just a type of energy that the emotional numbers carry about them that the other numbers in the head triad and the gut triad don't carry, that you kind of pick up on. You can kind of tell that 3s and 2s are more relationally aware, and they're kind of orienting around people at all times. Life for them is what people think of me. And they may not even consciously know that. That may be something that they have to do kind of some soul searching before they're able to see that that's true about them. But that is a common trait that they share. And for that reason, I think they're very social. They both tend to be very extroverted and very popular. Everybody loves both of them, but it's for different reasons and in a very different way. So for those reasons, I think that they can look very similar, but there are definitely some differences. One of the biggest differences that I would tell you to look for is where is it that they're trying to place the relational attention. A 2 places relational attention on other people. They're very extroverted, they're very popular, they're kind of out in the crowd mingling and getting to know people, they're very comfortable at parties. That's kind of really their space, you know what I mean? Because there's lots of emotional and relational energy there, and that's kind of what charges them up. It's what charges a 3 up as well, but the difference is that a 2 is working in that space to kind of, what's a good way to say it? Exalt other people. In other words, 2s are trying to spend their energy drawing the attention to other people and other people's needs. What do you want? What do you like? How can I make you happy? A 3 is using their energy to draw attention to themselves. Hey, look at me. This is what I can do. This is why I'm impressive. This is why you should know me. These are the things that I know. This is who I can hook you up with. This is how competent I am. This is how fast I can get this done. Does that make sense? So they are both attention-oriented. 2s are trying to magnify attention and importance of other people. 3s are trying to magnify their own importance, and they're trying to draw attention to them, if that makes sense. Now, I am going to say that there are circumstances and there are situations where 2s can seem really, really self-involved. They talk, they're going to get into places and situations where they don't want to talk about anything but themselves, and this is how I feel, and it's like they'll listen to what you have to say, and they're very polite about it, and they'll let you finish, but then they immediately jump right back into them and how they're feeling and what they're going through, and it's like they just can't stop talking about it. It just makes them feel good to talk about what they have inside of themselves, their emotions, what that emotional world looks like. They almost always do this when they want to just kind of really indulge in a discussion about a relationship that's either falling apart or one that they're very excited about developing. In the instances, though, where that happens with an Enneagram Type 2, it's usually going to be in a one-on-one situation, and you will find that it happens when an Enneagram Type 2 person is with someone that they consider to be superior to them. And I don't mean they're thinking, oh, this person's better than me, but what I'm saying is an Enneagram Type 2 person will have the tendency to identify people that they trust with their emotions, someone that they believe can help give them emotional guidance, and as long as they're in a one-on-one situation with that person, what you'll find with an Enneagram Type 2 is that the topic of conversation and the attention, they're constantly drawing the attention on them. They don't want to talk about you. They want to talk about them. There are a lot of reasons for that. One of the biggest reasons, I believe, is because they spend so much time in the public world interacting in groups, trying to make the most of other people, that I think it's kind of refreshing for an Enneagram Type 2 to be in a one-on-one situation with someone that they feel that they can trust with that emotional inner world that they have. I think that they're hoping that we'll come along and ask them to spill that part of themselves to us. I think that they're hoping that we'll value them enough to ask that question about them. I think that they're wanting us to be as interested in them as they are in us. And when you're in a group setting, as twos often are, because again, that's kind of their environment, that's where they thrive, that's where they get their energy, that's not going to happen. The type of interaction that you're going to get in an environment that twos are typically found in is more like topical chit-chat, that kind of a thing. This is my favorite sports team. Did you see this movie? Oh, I love that restaurant. Have you ever been there? You have to try it. Those kind of things. So I just say all of this to tell you that if you know someone who is a 2 and they seem like they're a little more self-involved, like they want to talk about them, they never talk about you, examine the circumstance that that's happening in. Probably, I would imagine it's happening in a one-on-one circumstance. I don't imagine that you're experiencing that or seeing that when they're in a group setting and they're interacting with a lot of people at once, or when there's a lot of possibilities for social interaction. Then they tend to be more other-focused, okay? So, again, to recap, in social situations, 3s are drawing attention to themselves and showing you why they are set apart from the group, why they're better in some fashion or another. 2s are drawing attention to other people and focusing on their needs. How can I meet your need? How can I make you like me? Tell me what I can do. Does that make sense? So that's a difference to look for, okay? And I've given you the exception to that. 2s love emotionally connecting with people. Intimacy is a really, really big deal for them. Just like I just said, 2s are really going to want, more than anything, very, very deep inside, 2s want you to want to have the emotional connection with them that they want to have with you. I would say that if we're talking about an Enneagram Type 2 person who is a female, most of which are, by the way, the statistics for Enneagram Type 2 lean, I want to say it's like 80 to 85% female. It's massive, okay? When you're a female and you're an Enneagram Type 2, that need for emotional connection is exacerbated even more. When you are an Enneagram Type 2 and you're feeling, your Myers-Briggs type is a feeling type over a thinking type, it's exacerbated even more. When you are an Enneagram Type 2 and your Myers-Briggs type is an NF type, this means ENFJ, ENFP, INFJ, INFP, it's exacerbated even more. What I want you to get from this is that if you are an Enneagram Type 2 female who is perhaps an ENFJ, on the Enneagram, your need for intimacy with other human beings and your need for constant relational connection is nothing short of a desperation. It's like air that you breathe in your lungs. You don't understand what life is if you don't have that, okay? I tell you all of this to tell you that Enneagram Type 3 is very, very, very different in this respect. They almost seem... It can be counterintuitive sometimes, I think, when we say that they're in the heart triad, the emotional triad, the relational triad, because when you first meet a Type 3, you've got to kind of look for those aspects. It's not readily apparent. 3s fear intimacy. I know that they want it very, very much. They have that need inside of them to connect, just like someone who is an Enneagram Type 2. The difference is an Enneagram Type 2 welcomes that. They're inviting that in. That's everything to them. That's their life source. It's the air that they breathe. 3s want it, but they're not really sure that they can have it, because for a 3, there's a whole lot that's going to be at risk when you become emotionally intimate with someone. You know, emotions are, they're messy things. They're not neat, they're not clean, they're not perfect. When you start to know somebody from an emotional aspect, you're going to discover one thing very quickly. You're going to discover that they're a hot mess, and that's a nice way of saying it. You know, intellectually, we can make ourselves seem really put together and very educated, and we can kind of dose that out in a way that gives the image that we want you to have. And, you know, physically, we can make ourselves look nice and dress nice and stay fit and eat healthy and skincare products and the whole nine, whatever you want, okay? But when we get to emotions, so few of us are capable of regulating those emotions in a way that's flattering to the image that we want to present. And even if you know how to regulate those emotions, how to cope with them, how to present them or express them, you really can't control what you feel sometimes. I mean, you're just going to have triggers that bring things up in you. You know, emotions can't be planned. They're fluid things. They don't fit inside of a box. And so it's scary for an Enneagram Type 3 to emotionally connect with people, to share the things that they have really deep inside of their heart, because it's so contrary to the image that they want you to see. Does that make sense? They just want you to think of them as competent people who have, you know, all their shit together. They've got their lives together. They've got their act together. They've got all the answers. Life is working for them. They're very successful. Emotions don't fit into that picture all of the time. They just don't. More often than not, they don't. And so that's the part of themselves that they're trying to cut off. They're trying to kind of cordon that away and just keep that stuffed away, if that makes sense. They're aware of them. They feel them. They're very private with their emotions. They just don't want you to be a part. They want you to be a part of that world, but they fear that because there's just this constant wrestling. It's like, do I really want to have this intimate connection and risk losing this person's respect for me, their admiration of me, or do I want to sacrifice this person's respect and admiration for me for the opportunity to be intimate with them in an emotional way? That is the constant battle for Enneagram Type 3. Enneagram Type 2 isn't asking these questions. They absolutely and unquestionably want to have that emotional connection with you. They're okay if you don't think that they're the greatest people in the world. They're okay if you could find things that are wrong with them. They'll probably even agree with what you tell them because they believe that being agreeable will make you love them more. They believe that being agreeable will create an opportunity for emotional connection. Enneagram 3 doesn't have that problem. So those are two differences, okay? All right, so to take all of what I just said, recap. Enneagram Type 2 welcomes intimacy and tries to create a relational atmosphere that will foster it because they need emotional connections to survive. 3s want it, but they fear it. And so because of that, they often cordon that part of themselves off. That's the part of them that you don't get to see. You get to see their opinions, their intelligence, their ability to achieve tasks, to accomplish goals, their outward appearance, the possessions that they have that they're proud of. Those are the sorts of things that they'll show you. But they won't show you the ugliness that's behind all of that. Oh. That was another point. Let me pull my my sheet back up here. I briefly touched on this already. I'm going to say it again just in a nutshell. 2s, their relation to other people is that of helping. They want to help other people. What can I do for you to make you happy so that you will love me? That's Enneagram Type 2. Enneagram Type 3 wants to impress other people. I'm going to say this in the only way that I know how, but it sounds kind of shallow, although I don't intend it to, but I just don't have better language for it right now. But for Enneagram Type 3, it's more like, how can I show off for you so that you'll be impressed by me and think that I've got all of this worth and value to me based on what I do and what I accomplish? Does that make sense? Those are differences. Another way to say it, this just came to me. Okay, 2s want you to love them. They want you to want them. 3s want you to, I don't like the word worship. That's too strong of a word. 3s want you to admire them and to follow them. Okay? Does that make sense? Two differences. I say a lot. I feel like I kind of touched on this as well already. Just kind of their demeanor when they're interacting with other people. 2s are very, very emotional. It's much easier to tell what a 2 is feeling in any given conversation. You can tell, even if they don't say it outright, you can tell where they're at emotionally. If a 2 is hurt by something that you've said to them, even if they don't tell you that, you can see that that exterior, that demeanor change. You kind of see the countenance change. 3s, you can interact with them all day long and have a conversation, and you've offended them 20 times, and you don't have the slightest clue unless they tell you, because they are so fantastic at just keeping that front on. That I'm cool, nothing's bothering me kind of a front. So that kind of ties into that point that I made earlier about 2s being more willing to initiate that emotional connection, and 3s trying to cordon their emotions off from their interactions with people. So that kind of ties into that, but that's just something to look for. If you're in conversation with someone, if you're assessing yourself or them, the question to ask is it easy for me to tell what this person is feeling right now without them having to verbalize it? If the answer to that question is yes, you're talking to an Enneagram Type 2. If the answer to that question is no, you would be talking to an Enneagram Type 3. Not necessarily. There are other numbers, of course, that would show emotion more readily, and there are other numbers on the Enneagram that cordon off their emotions, but I'm just talking about this in terms of comparing 2 and 3. I'm going to talk about this point, but this is a point that tends to be offensive for people that are Enneagram Type 3, but it's a reality, so I'm going to try and talk about it in a really sensitive way, but it is something that we need to talk about. Again, this is just a topical behavior that you can look for, kind of an attitude, really. Enneagram Type 2s often appear to be very selfless, giving, altruistic people. Again, it's as if everything that they have, all of their resources, whatever those resources are, it's as if all of those resources are yours for the taking. Just ask and they'll give it to you. You kind of know if you had an Enneagram Type 2 and an Enneagram Type 3, and you had to choose between the two of those people and you needed a really big favor, I mean, I think all of us know we're going to go to the person who's an Enneagram Type 2. Why? Because we know that if we ask them for something, the chances of them giving it to us, if they have it to give, are very, very great. Enneagram Type 3, they can appear a little selfish. They're more concerned about the promotion of self than the promotion of others. And this is an issue that I want to address in comparing these two, because again, this is one of those things that's hard to talk about when especially if you're a Type 3, because you tend to get defensive about that because you don't appreciate when someone calls you selfish. So I'm going to level the playing field a little bit. If you're an Enneagram Type 3, here you go. This is your card you can play. I don't want us to assume that because someone is an Enneagram Type 2 and they're really selfless and they're giving and all of that stuff, I don't want us to assume that they're any better than an Enneagram Type 3, and I don't want us to assume that they've got the right idea. You guys understand there is such a thing as selfish giving, okay? The Enneagram is a fantastic tool for 10,000 plus reasons, but one of the things that I love about the Enneagram is it can teach you about what I call selfish giving. Selfish giving is giving so that you can get something in return. Enneagram Type 2 absolutely does this. So on the outside, it kind of looks like, hey, this is a really nice person. They give me whatever I want when I want. They care about me. They're always checking in on me. They'd share all their stuff with me. I know I could rely on them if I were ever in hard times, blah, 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 whatever. But you need to understand when you don't reciprocate to an Enneagram Type 2, the emotional relationship, the affirmation, the connection that they're looking for, they're going to get really resentful of the fact that you just took advantage of them. Because in their mind, consciously or unconsciously, and most of the time it is unconscious, Enneagram Type 2 is assuming that if they give you what you want from them, you will give them the love, affirmation, and attention and acceptance that they want in return from you. But how often do we do that, right? We take what we want and say, okay, thanks, bye, see you later. And they're kind of left in the emotional lurch, so to speak. And this is where they start to kind of get into their whole, martyrdom thing. And this is where we start talking about levels of health for Enneagram numbers. And we're talking about, sinking down into different levels of health. And I'm telling you all of this because I want you to know that when I give the comparison of selflessness and selfishness between Enneagram Type 2 and Enneagram Type 3, kind of on the surface, it really looks like I'm painting Enneagram Type 3 to be this really nasty person, but I just want you to know that a lot of times Enneagram Type 2, all this nice little stuff they're doing on the surface is really very manipulative. Whether they are willing to admit that or not, and I imagine most of them would not be willing to admit that, because again, shame is a big issue for the types in the heart triad, meaning 2, 3, and 4. So here's another thing that we'll talk about if you're a 2 or a 3 or a 4, but specifically 2 or 3 today. It's hard for you to hear these things about yourself, and it's hard for you to honestly assess the things that you don't believe that you're doing right. I don't even think it's right or wrong for you guys. I think it's just brokenness. I think if you're in the heart triad, if you're a 2, a 3, or a 4, I don't think you guys are capable of looking at your brokenness. I don't even really think you guys care if it's, oh, this is how I should have behaved or I shouldn't have behaved, and this is how I should feel, and this is how I shouldn't have expressed my emotions. I don't think it's about any of that at all. I think it's that you just want to feel like you are whole human beings with a solid sense of identity. And I think that because you don't feel that way, you have a really hard time when people bring up to you the aspects of your brokenness, which is what the Enneagram does. And so you tend to get really defensive about that. And so that's why I'm saying if you're a 2, I think it's going to be really hard for you to admit that you give in a manipulative fashion, because that's directly facing that brokenness that you wish to God you didn't have. It's just another reminder that you don't know where your worth comes from. Okay? You don't. That's another reminder for you. If you're 3, it's hard when you hear me talk about your fear about connecting with other people emotionally, because I'm just reminding you that you're broken. I'm reminding you that you aren't this image that you've been portraying yourself to be, and that's the stuff that scares the shit out of you, because you don't even know how to begin to tackle this idea of who am I if I'm not this. That's a massive question for you. That is probably the question that you're leading in life with, okay? So I understand that I'm touching on a sensitive part, but we need to address those sensitive parts, because you weren't created to live in this place. Whether you're a 2 or a 3, I don't care which one. You're not created to live in this place. So we need to address these issues, okay? So I'm leveling the playing field. I'm going to recap. Enneagram Type 2 appears on the surface to be selfless, although their giving is oftentimes very manipulative. 3s on the surface, it's pretty obvious that they're interested in their their own self-development and just self-promotion. However, I am going to say that a very healthy 3 who has gone through healing and who has decided to sit with God and allow God to define who they are and not their accomplishments, those 3s are capable of taking all of their success and all of their ability to make life work for them, and they can use it to help promote other people. I know 3s who have harnessed just that amazing promotion, that ability to promote, that ability to sell, and then they apply it to other people and they start promoting other people and help raising other people up. It is awesome. If you ever get to meet a 3 that's gone through enough healing that they can set aside their own ego need to start raising other people up and develop other people into their own potential. It's absolutely fantastic. It's one of the coolest things in the world to see. I love it. It's like kind of watching, God walk around on earth. It's really cool. So there's another difference. I have 5 minutes. Just 4 minutes. I want to cover something else. Oh, here's a difference. This is kind of a fun little difference. This is an easy thing to spot most of the time. When they get upset, 2s will get really feisty. And I use the word feisty. Sassy is maybe another word. Snarky could be a word. They don't get downright angry, at least not right away. It takes a lot. Like, you gotta push a 2. You gotta push them. Take. When they get to the point where they feel like you've just pretty much just stolen from them, emotionally raped them, if you'll excuse the crudeness of the term, then they may lose their temper. But if you're just kind of starting to work on their nerves a little bit, they're going to get sassy. They're going to they've got like this smart aleck, sassy kind of an attitude. Their tone changes. I have a friend of mine who is a 2, and she, her mom relies on her a lot to do a lot of things, and she hasn't developed yet the boundaries, I think, to say no when she doesn't want to do something. And so what'll happen is her mom will ask her for all these favors, and she'll do all these favors, and her mom will just keep asking and asking and asking and asking. And so my friend, gets to that point where she feels like she's being taken advantage of, and she wants to go do things for her, but her mom doesn't kind of want to let her go. And she'll start to get real snarky. She'll get that sassy little feisty tone. And her mom always says, she's always like, "What's that tone in your voice? Now all of a sudden you have a tone in your voice. You were so pleasant before, but now you have kind of like a tone, like you're irritated. I don't appreciate that." So that's an example. 2s will get feisty. Yeah. When 3s get upset, they just detach. They're going to withdraw from that. That is not what you would expect from them because they are an aggressive type. I think that when we hear the word aggressive, we think of someone that loses their temper easily, someone that forces life to work for them. And 3s aren't going to lose their temper. They're really not. They're not reactive. They're competent types like type 1 and type 5, which means that they're just going to approach that from a sense of emotional detachment. But here's where the aggression comes in for them. Aggression for type 3 doesn't look like emotional force. What it looks like is strategic thinking. So, life may say no to an Enneagram Type 3. An Enneagram Type 3 is going to say, "Okay, we'll see about that. I'll be back." And they withdraw from the situation for whatever length of time, and they work on it. They devise plans. They try things. They start lining things up and putting things in motion. They start, sweet-talking somebody over here and, selling something to someone over here. And pretty soon they got enough people that have bought into this idea that they've got enough support to make this happen. And now all of a sudden this situation that was a no for them earlier is now a giant wide open door, that they get to walk right through, and they've got a whole platform of people that are going to come in behind them. So they get what they want, and then they get followers, that they've picked up along the way. That's what aggression looks like for type 3. Aggression simply means, in my terms, this is how I would describe it, you make life work for you. Life revolves around you. You don't revolve around it. You don't take no for an answer, okay? Withdrawing types are very different. Dependent types, very different again. That's a whole nother video, and I'm out of time, so I'm not going to go into that here. But these are some really key differences. There are a couple of other things that I really wanted to cover that we could do, but I gave you some really, really good stuff in this video. You have enough just from this video alone to bolster your ability to tell type 2 and type 3 if you're having that struggle, okay? So, yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. If you have any additional questions or anything, you guys know the drill, comments and stuff, you know, and I'll get back to you when I can, okay? Thank you.